She said he watched, then struck. And the courtroom, it didn't just go quiet, it stopped breathing. Day 2 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial wasn't just uncomfortable, it was historic. The kind of day that makes you forget you're watching a courtroom and start to wonder if you're witnessing the collapse of an empire in real time. Cassie Ventura, 9 months pregnant and 9 years overdue for justice, walked in and detonated every illusion we had about the so-called mogul. Her testimony, graphic, damning, unforgettable. From surveillance footage to hidden tapes, to a note so disturbing it shut the room down cold. And just wait, because what she revealed about what really happened inside those hotel rooms might be the darkest revelation the music industry has ever faced. You're watching Chatter Fuse, where the masks come off and the truth gets uncomfortable. If you thought yesterday was wild, today isn't just explosive, it's radioactive. Stay tuned.
I was in the courtroom as Cassie was testifying, so let me tell you guys everything that you didn't see or may have not heard, because it's a lot. I will say the most damning part of her testimony for me is when she describes a freak-off where Diddy and another man, an escort, are standing on top of her while she is laying on the floor high off of ecstasy, and they are urinating on her face to the point where she is choking on their pee. And to further give context, on the right-hand side of the court seated is her husband, Alex Fine. On the left-hand side, Diddy's 6 out of 7 kids are sitting in the courtroom as Cassie is describing having weekly freak-offs for years that would last 2, 3, one lasted up to 4 days. She talked about damaging hotel rooms so bad in one instance that they had to pay such a hefty fee because the hotel told them that they needed to completely redecorate the room after a freak-off. After a freak-off, there would be blood, urine, and lots of baby oil. There was so much baby oil. There was also so much baby oil talk to the point where the judge at one point told prosecutors, wrap it up. But before we even got there, a very pregnant Cassie was called to the stand.
What followed was not a performance. There were no theatrics, no raised voices. Just a woman, pregnant, exhausted, but resolute, laying bare a reality no one in that courtroom was prepared for. Cassie didn't flinch. She spoke in calm, deliberate detail about being forced into sex acts with strangers while Diddy watched from across the room, or worse, recorded it. Sometimes he'd sit in the corner and pleasure himself. Other times, she said, he'd give directions like he was producing a scene. She said he didn't just control her body, he controlled her fear. He made her carry an unlicensed firearm across state lines, not to protect herself, but to make sure she didn't run. And when she tried to say no, the punishments came fast, not emotional distance, actual physical consequences. Being slapped, dragged by her hair, choked, in public and private. Once, she said, he beat her so badly the hotel staff made them pay thousands to reupholster the entire suite. The drugs weren't for fun either. They were mandatory. She said he encouraged MDMA before every freak-off because it made her compliant, floaty, easier to direct. It blurred the line between reality and obedience, and that's exactly how he liked it. And then there were the tapes. He filmed everything, every degrading moment, every act of submission. She said he used those recordings like currency. If she stepped out of line, he'd remind her who had the footage. Not a threat, a promise. She described being cut off completely from her family. Friends? Gone. Business contacts? Blocked. He built a bubble around her and called it love. But what she described wasn't romance. It was captivity with room service. 10 years, 10 years of curated appearances, glossy photos, red carpets, and underneath it all, a reality soaked in fear, silence, and surveillance. Cassie said she was a puppet in a golden cage, glamorous on the outside, but inside, trembling. If anyone in that courtroom was still questioning her story, the prosecution made sure to erase all doubt, piece by piece. First came the surveillance video. From 2016, grainy but unmistakable, Diddy assaulting Cassie in a hotel hallway. No one looked away. Some jurors visibly recoiled. Even Diddy's legal team didn't flinch, not in denial, but because there was nothing to deny. Then came the texts. cold, commanding, and explicit. Messages telling Cassie to find another girl for tonight. Mentions of camera equipment, setups, recording angles. Not the words of a desperate man, but of someone running a system. The images followed: bruises on her arms, cuts on her face, photos taken by friends, cross-checked against hospital records, visits logged under false names, a clear effort to avoid attention. But now, those records are center stage. And it didn't stop there. Prosecutors brought out flight records and hotel bookings, mapped perfectly to the timeline Cassie laid out. Same days, same cities, same suite numbers. No holes, no loose ends. And then the courtroom dropped to a deeper silence. A note, pulled from Cassie's iCloud backup, scrawled in her own handwriting. Just one line. He owns me, even when I sleep. The air left the room. That wasn't evidence. It was a cry from a woman buried alive, one she never meant for the world to hear, but now read aloud for 12 strangers who hold her fate, and his. Every detail pointed to a pattern, not an isolated mistake, a design. But Diddy didn't build his empire by folding under pressure. And his defense team? They came in armed, ready to spin the story in a way only power and money can. With the weight of the evidence stacked high, Diddy's defense team had no choice but to swing hard and hope something landed. Attorney Teny Geragos started by reframing the entire narrative. She argued that this wasn't abuse, it was lifestyle. According to her, Cassie had willingly participated in Diddy's world for over a decade. She wasn't trapped, the defense claimed. She chose to stay. Then came the money talk. Geragos pointed to Cassie's recent civil settlement and an alleged book deal in the works, implying that financial gain was the true motive behind her testimony. A calculated move, not a cry for justice. And when that didn't shake the jury, they pivoted again, this time to the substances, MDMA, alcohol. The suggestion? Cassie's long-term use blurred the lines between memory and imagination, that her recollections were tainted by time and intoxication. Finally, they tried to dismantle her timeline. Gaps in hotel dates, inconsistencies in the booking logs, minor misalignments between her story and the paperwork. It wasn't about disproving everything, just sowing enough doubt to make the jury hesitate. But the jury didn't blink. Not once. Several jurors kept their eyes locked on Cassie through every twist in the cross-examination. Even when the defense tried to corner her, there was no visible shift in trust. No folded arms, no skeptical glances, just quiet focus, like they knew exactly what was happening. And that's when Geragos went for the jugular. She leaned forward, voice sharp, and asked the one question survivors are asked far too often. Why didn't you just leave? Cassie paused. Then came the answer that turned the entire courtroom to stone. Her voice cracked, but her words were clear. If I ever did, she said, I'd never work again, and my mother would disappear. That was it. No legal jargon, no dramatic delivery, just a raw truth that hit the room like a gunshot. Gasps echoed from the gallery. Even some of the press, hardened by years of courtroom coverage, were visibly shaken. The judge slammed the gavel, not for order, because there was none left to maintain. He simply called a recess, as if the entire room needed to breathe again. And maybe they did. Behind the defense table, Diddy sat frozen. His daughters, 6 of them, got up quietly and walked out, wiping tears as they passed through the heavy courtroom doors. Even his attorneys stopped flipping papers. The moment was beyond damage control. Cassie remained on the stand, trembling but unbroken. After years of being silenced, this was her voice. Finally heard, finally believed. She wasn't just describing abuse anymore. She was showing what it means to survive it. No one moved, no one dared speak. Because in that instant, it became impossible to pretend that this was just another celebrity trial. It was something else entirely, something deeper. And as the gallery sat in stunned silence, they all knew. The darkest revelations were still ahead. But even that moment, Cassie's voice shaking as she described the threat to her mother, wasn't the end, because the final hour of her testimony took the trial from horrifying to unthinkable. She told the court there were cameras, hidden ones, installed in hotel rooms, penthouses, even private residences, not for security, for surveillance, and not for safety, only control. Diddy, she said, recorded everything: the freak-offs, the assaults, the moments of humiliation, then stored those videos on encrypted hard drives, locked away like insurance policies, not against the law, but against the people he kept closest. One night, she walked in on him editing footage, not of her, but of another woman, mid-assault. He was adjusting lighting, trimming the clip like it was a music video. When she confronted him, he didn't apologize. He didn't hide it. He told her he kept these tapes to make sure people stayed in line. And when that wasn't enough, she described an incident from 2018. After a heated argument, she says Diddy forced her to strip naked, hold a gun, and record a video apology. Alone, crying, weapon in frame. The implication didn't need to be explained. It hung in the courtroom air like smoke. Then came Miami. According to Cassie, she was sent there with $10,000 in cash, hand-delivered to a woman who had threatened to go public with her own story. Along with the cash was a non-disclosure agreement and a warning. If she talked, she'd vanish. Blood, money, tape, threat. It was methodical, ruthless, and far too detailed to be fiction. The courtroom wasn't just heavy, it was haunted. And just when you thought this case couldn't possibly get darker, Homeland Security got involved. By the time court adjourned, the silence in the gallery said more than any testimony could. But the case isn't slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating. Digital forensic experts are now expected to comb through the encrypted drives prosecutors believe contain years of hidden footage. Not rumors, not allegations. Actual video files, potentially confirming what multiple witnesses have now described in chilling detail. And that's not all. A second woman whose identity is currently protected under court order may soon take the stand. Sources say her accusations mirror Cassie's almost exactly, right down to the methods of control, the camera setups, and the threats. If she testifies, it won't just bolster the prosecution's case, it could shatter any remaining defense claims of consent. Then there's the federal side. Homeland Security is reportedly preparing to present travel records tied to Diddy's entourage, international flights, private charters, and connections that could stretch this case beyond the bounds of domestic abuse and into the territory of cross-border trafficking. That's no longer just celebrity scandal, that's federal crime. Before the courtroom cleared for the day, Judge Murison leaned forward and delivered one final statement. Clear, sharp, and directed at the defense. This court will not tolerate any attempt to silence victims. No theatrics, no warning shots. Just a promise that justice isn't going to play by celebrity rules. If this is how day 2 ends, the next phase could crack the industry wide open. And if you've been following this closely, we're just getting started. Make sure you're subscribed. Tomorrow could change everything. This is no longer about headlines or hashtags. It's not just Diddy on trial, it's an entire system being dragged into the light. A culture that looked the other way. An industry that protected its own while the victims stayed silent or were silenced. Cassie Ventura didn't just testify, she transformed. From the woman in the background of red carpet photos to the voice at the center of a national reckoning. And no matter what the verdict is, her words are already reshaping how we talk about power, fame, and abuse. As for the jury, they aren't just weighing evidence. They're sitting with decades of buried secrets, systemic silence, and the stories of women who were told to stay quiet. They're not holding just a verdict. They're holding history. And now, we want to hear from you. What do you think? Will Diddy's empire survive this? Is this the start of real accountability? Or just another scandal swept under the rug? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow with everything that breaks.